me ask you something. When you come in on Monday and you're not feeling real well, do you ever ask yourself if you have a case of the Mondays? Our guest today sure thinks you should. Now, admittedly, Mondays have a bit of a PR problem, with Fats Domino calling it Blue Monday and T-Bone Walker calling it Stormy Monday, even though Tuesday's just as bad and Wednesday's even worse. But returning guest Sam Allred loves Mondays, and he's used this affinity for the first day of the week as a guiding force to help him navigate both his personal and professional growth and happiness. I've personally adopted a practice of asking myself how I'm feeling about Mondays as a result of this conversation with Sam, and I'm excited to share it with you as well. Now, a little bit about our guest before we jump in. Sam, who we first heard from in episode 100 of the podcast, is a director at Upstream Academy and has been regularly recognized as one of the major influences in the accounting profession. You can learn more about Sam and get additional resources for this episode at Forbes.com/simplytax. All right, let's get the tough question out of the way right out of the start. Sam, what's with the love of Mondays?
Well, Monday was always in my mind. I don't know when I first got that, decades ago. I know that at some point I was loving what I was doing so much that I found that I don't know if this is an overstatement. I was giddy on Sunday night. I don't work on Sunday. For me, I consider it the Sabbath. I've never worked on Sunday ever. And so I was anxious to get back to something that I was loving. And I just noted that on Sunday night, part of my excitement was I get to do this tomorrow. I'm excited about it. And I tried diligently not to work that many Saturdays, more or less was successful. So I'd been away from it in many cases for 2 days, and I was excited to get back into it. And at some point, decades ago, I just realized, man, that's my litmus test. If I love what I'm doing on Monday morning enough that it's my favorite day of the week, then I'm just going to keep doing it. I'd be a fool to stop. If I no longer loved it to that extent, if I was ever dreading it, probably time to make a change, probably time to do something different. And I truly feel like, and I thank the good Lord every day, I feel like I'm blessed to do something I love doing. I do remember this quote. I read it years ago by Henry Ford. He said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I just remember thinking, that's really true. If you really love what you do, what a gift. And generally, if you love it, you'll be good at it. It's hard to love things we're lousy at. So I'm really loving what I'm doing. What a gift. What a blessing. I'm 38 years into my career, a year and a half from my expiration date. Most of my career runway is behind me, not ahead of me. And that, for the vast majority of my career, that's been my litmus test, is if I love Mondays, keep doing it.
What does that look like for you? How do you do that and make sure that you're doing it effectively when you're evaluating your Mondays?
First of all, when I recognized it, I never felt the need to think deeply about it. I never said, well, tell me why this is and look into it and whatever. I just thought, wow, what a gift, and I'll do it. I have spent time thinking about, over the years, why do I love Mondays so much? And what is it that I love about my career and about what I'm doing? I love teaching. That came as a blessing. I wasn't a speaker when I was young. I can guarantee you that nobody ever said to me, great job, except maybe my mom when I spoke in church, and she had to. Otherwise, I butchered it. I couldn't articulate a sentence. And I was painfully shy and I'm introverted. I'm still introverted, but much more comfortable with others, but I'm still an introvert. And at some point, I just remember giving a presentation about 3 years into my career. I was with Maine Herdman, one of the big eight. Maybe it was 2 years in, relatively early on. And I remember in the middle of that presentation, for the first time ever, thinking, hey, this is going pretty good. You're speaking at the same time you're having a conversation with yourself, which is kind of odd. And I remember thinking, you're not nervous. For the first time ever, you're not nervous. Hey, for the first time ever, you're articulating things pretty clearly. You just went on a tangent. Somebody asked a question, you went on a tangent and came back, and you were completely comfortable. And it was an odd experience in that I was dialoguing with myself in the middle of giving a presentation that I don't know what changed. I do not know what switch got flipped that wasn't in the off position before, but it got turned on. And when I was done, I remember going back and sitting at my cubicle thinking, I'm not sure what just happened, but that's a pretty big deal. That I would actually go from top 10 fears speaking to enjoying it immediately. I do not know what happened. I don't to this day. I'll just call it a gift from God because I don't know how else to describe it. But I remember starting to give more presentations because of that. Being comfortable has never left me. There's always some butterflies in certain settings, big groups, never spoke on the topic before, high pressure, whatever. You'll feel butterflies. But concern about it, dislike for it, never happened again. And so the fact that I get to teach a lot, which would be determined maybe playing to strengths, I get to speak a lot, I get to interact with people. I have a genuine love of people. I get to help them. I like to solve problems. Probably one of the weaknesses of a consultant is to make everything sound simple and doable. But I love to solve problems. My mind's geared that way. I love to help people and help organizations get better. That's what I get to do. So if you look at it, everything I love doing is what I get to do pretty much every day. Some of it's hard. Helping somebody through a challenging problem is hard. I get on a plane in the morning to go help a firm that really needs help, and it'll be challenging. But what a gift and a privilege to be able to help somebody through a challenge, help them climb their Mount Everest individually or as a firm. And I've learned that even the challenging things, I grow confidence, I grow skill, I grow ability. It never stops growing. I'm not flatlining my career. I'm still trying to climb mountains, if you will, from a professional standpoint. That just energizes me. So there's very, very little that I do on a daily basis that I don't just love doing. To me, some of it I've learned to love, some of it I was wired to love. But if you love what you do, you're going to have a hard time hating your career. So to me, it's been that simple. I break it down to all the things I get to do. I love them, and I'm probably really good at them. And because of that, it's just a blessing.
I guess the question I have here is kind of a basic one around really understanding and identifying your strengths. And I mean, to that point, I mean, even you've kind of, I don't know if you call it, stumbled on your strength of being able to speak. And I would think that just that fear of that would keep many people away from actually trying to go down that road and be in that position that you were in the couple of years into the career doing that presentation. So what kind of got you over that to do it? And then how do you really just kind of get out of your own way and find your own strengths?
Let me start with one basic that I really do believe in. I don't believe we have any growth when we're staying comfortable. I don't think that works that way on this planet. I don't know how it works on other planets, but on this planet, if you want to grow, you got to feel uncomfortable. There's no comfortable way to grow. Maybe it was my parents that taught me that years ago, but I just remember thinking, I don't want a career of any kind where you play it so safe that you never gain any skills, you never gain any ability, you can't do anything better. I never wanted that. In fact, to me, that would be such an affront to spend time in a career and never grow. I was willing, I had at least enough courage, even as an introvert, I had enough courage to say, I'll do whatever people ask me to do, what they want me to do. And I don't remember who gave me the assignment to speak. And that, by the way, wasn't the first time I spoke or gave a presentation. It was the first time I was comfortable doing it. And I'm not sure why, but I've always been willing to do challenging things, not crazy things, just challenging things, things where you feel the butterflies. And I've been blessed to have a recognition that all my growth comes when I'm doing those kinds of things. I think the biggest impediment to anybody's career, this isn't just our profession, this is anywhere, the single biggest impediment to somebody's career is how much time they're willing to spend doing stuff they already know how to do. They're already comfortable. I think that's the secret trap that we've got to watch out for. I mean, you could be really good at something because you've done it 100 times. And the trap is everybody could pat you on the back and say, gee, Sam, you're so good at this. You are so good at this. And you can be feeling pretty good about yourself when really, in a sense, you need a wake-up call and say, geez, you've been doing the same thing for the last 12 years. You have no new skills, no new confidence, no new ability, because you've been doing the exact same thing. And all you've been doing is letting people pat you on the back and say how good you are, but you can't do anything beyond what you're already doing. There ought to be more alarms and sirens and barking dogs and whatever, searchlights and whatever than there are. And our profession is weak at that we'll let somebody sit in a trench and do the same thing for 20 years and pat them on the back and say, hey, someday I'll give you a gold watch. You've been awesome. And they can't do anything beyond what that is. So to me, at least I recognize that early on, that butterflies, everybody I think can relate to that term, butterflies. Feeling the butterflies is akin to feeling growth. And in a really strange way, Damien, I've learned through my life to actually say to myself, whether vocally or just in my head, Sam, I'm proud of you. You're nervous. I'm proud of you. You're doing something that makes you nervous. You're doing something you've not done before. You're doing it in a different way or whatever. And I'm proud of you. And that's meant a lot to me that I could say to myself, I'm proud of you. You're willing to climb a little higher. You're willing to do something you haven't done before. And that's where growth comes from. And if we can get to that level where we're willing to do that and seek that out, man, our career is going to stay on that incline plane. We're going to keep getting higher. And by higher, I mean we're more impactful. We can do more. We can affect more. That's been a little bit about my career. You asked about the strengths. There's a lot of books on strengths. And frankly, I've read a lot of books on strength. I'm not sure if that's how I've learned about strengths. To me, strengths are what I like doing and I'm good at, where I can make a difference. And I don't know that we need a book to tell us that. I mean, literally, when I started giving the presentations and I started feeling comfortable, I put more effort in, not less effort in. I prepared more, not less, even though it wasn't about not being nervous because somehow it was gone, but it was about being better, more impactful. And the more people that said that was really good, then I knew I was on the right track. And the more I heard that, the more it drove me to keep trying even harder. And that's what helped me know what my strengths were, is that they were impactful. They left a wake behind me of success. The results were good. The impact was good. And people say it helps them. That's what I need to keep doing. A book didn't need to tell me that. Not that you don't learn from those books. Don't get me wrong. But to me, strengths are things that you're naturally good at or can become good at, and they can make a difference. And to me, that's going to make your Mondays a whole lot better. If you spend 80% of your time playing to your strengths, Mondays are going to be a better day than if you spend 10% of your time playing to your strengths.
Without a doubt, right? And what I'm hearing you really saying is that you're just paying attention to yourself and also coaching yourself. Like you said, giving yourself that confidence is really what it takes. Again, not to diminish the ability, get a book on it and do the work, but it's just being present to being able to notice that. Is that essentially what you're saying here?
I love that term you gave, coaching yourself. Most people don't need a lot of external coaching if they're willing to be honest with themselves and coach themselves. And part of coaching themselves is challenging themselves. I mean, literally asking themselves, Sam, when was the last time you felt the butterflies? When was the last time you learned a new skill? Sam, look at what's on your to-do list. Are any of those things going to bring the butterflies? Are any of those things going to develop a new skill? Are any of those things going to get you out of your comfort zone? And if not, should you really be the one doing those things? Or could you give them to somebody else where it could become a skill developer for them? We need to be our own coaches more than we are. And we need to at least stop and challenge ourselves to say, is the path you're on an inclined plane? Or are you coasting or cruising? My favorite chapter from True Professionalism is chapter 4. It's called Dynamos, Cruisers, and Losers. It's such an impactful chapter. Every time I read it, I get excited and I get nervous because it's a wake-up call. It's that shot across the bow where David Maister said, and I don't think any of us are losers. You're a loser if you don't care, you don't try. But so many of us that I watch in our profession are cruisers because you're fully competent, but you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I love that he throws out that challenge. Do you want to be a cruiser, flatline your career, or do you want to be a dynamo where you're willing to give away things you're really good at so that you can take on things that you have never done before? And to me, we can coach ourselves towards being a dynamo. And we just need to be honest with ourselves about that.
Yeah, that's kind of just that internal piece of it, right? And just speaking from my own experience here, sometimes the outside of work, can impact how you're feeling about the inside of work. Kind of that. I'm a big fan of kind of work-life integration versus balance because I think I have twin 7-year-olds. They're integrating themselves in there somehow, right? I don't know. Would you agree with that? And how do you kind of navigate that and maybe sometimes get to the true feeling and being true to yourself or really honest with yourself?
Sometimes we can get so caught up in whatever it is that's busy, whatever it is that's urgent, they can just consume us. And we never take the time to get back and get to 10,000 feet, get above the trees and say, how am I really doing? I need to do an assessment. And one thing that we can do is do an assessment. We can do an inventory. We can say, where am I at right now? What have I done for the last month or whatever? And has it been what I've done the month before previous? And what have I done that's new? And what new skills have I developed? And where have I felt the butterflies? And where have I helped somebody else? And I think we need to just do it in introspection at times, to just take a look at our career. There's a section in 7 Habits, Stephen R. Covey's book, on habit number 2, which is put first things first, on this matrix. And he calls them quadrants 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think it's so easy to get trapped into quadrant 1, where everything's urgent and everything's important. And all we do is go from deadline to deadline. I see people trapped in quadrant 1 all the time. And I think that periodically we need to step back and say, am I living a life that's in quadrant 1? If so, there's no way it's going to be fulfilled. There's no way it's going to be as impactful. There's no way I can probably sustain it, because I'll burn out. To me, that was a valuable catalyst for me in my career. I read that book when it came out in 1990, 1991. And that whole thing about spending more time in quadrant 2 is the only way out of quadrant 1, where things are important but not urgent. Preparation, prevention, values, clarification, processes, those kinds of things. And I've learned to regularly spend time in quadrant 2. And when I do that, I have very few quadrant 1 things ever come at me. I'm well prepared for anything. I have a lot of deadlines, but I get my stuff done way before the deadline, so it's not an urgent thing. To me, that has helped me preserve my career and quality of it, my excitement, my Mondays feeling good or whatever. If you don't spend much time in quadrant 2, I'm not sure every Monday is going to be a great experience. You have people screaming at you probably, or you'll scream at yourself. That's even worse. So to me, I think that quadrant 2 stuff was a real Monday saver for me.
Hey, it's a Monday here. We're talking now, right? And coming in this morning, and let's just say that I'm feeling like, my love of Mondays has declined a little bit. I'm spending too much time in quadrant 1, or I'm not doing things that are giving me the butterflies. What then? What do I do now, Sam?
I'm not a big fan of major course corrections. I'm a huge fan of minor course corrections. I love the 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree course correction. I'm not a big fan of a 30-degree course correction. It's how you turn the ship over, if we're back on a fishing thing. To me, I'd say you need to evaluate that or whatever. I haven't always done what I'm doing now. There was a time, it was probably 2000, 2001. I had been implementing high-end accounting software, had built a great career doing that, had a great team of people. I was loving it. And then over a period of 2 years, the company that we used their software sold to another company, similar culture, we liked them. And then they sold to Microsoft, and it wasn't the same culture. And over a 2-year window, what used to be so fun, all of a sudden I realized Monday after Monday, it wasn't fun, and I didn't see it changing. See, I tried to do some things. I tried to make some adjustments, but it became obvious to me, and maybe it wasn't a full 2 years, but over this period of time, it became obvious to me, I'm no longer feeling like that. In fact, I'm probably somewhat dreading it. I can't wait till Friday. And I thought, that's not the career I want. So I remember when I made that observation, I was with an accounting firm, a regional accounting firm. The managing partner happened to be a dear, dear friend, has been outside of my wife. He's probably been my best friend for 30 years now. I went into him and I said, I want to change. I managed this department. It was very profitable, quite large. I said, I want to give it up. There's another partner that can manage it and run it, and I want to do something completely different. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but I'm willing to figure it out with the firm. I don't need to leave the firm to figure it out. If you allow me to do that, you'll need to be a little bit patient, but I won't flounder for years. I'll figure it out. We'll get after it. And that's really where Upstream Academy came from. I turned that over, and I remember I started with a blank sheet of paper. I started writing down, what do I like? What do I not like? Who do I want to serve? And it dawned on me that I loved working with accounting firms. I loved working with them. And I thought, why not build a whole practice around that's who you serve? And that was early 2000, 2001. I started Upstream Academy. It's been going strong ever since. And now we serve about 400 accounting firms and love it. And Mondays are the greatest day ever. You do owe it to yourself to figure out how to change if you don't like what you're doing. None of us are powerless. And none of us should feel like prisoners, and none of us have to do something. To me, the boundaries have always been, it ought to be legal, it ought to be moral, it ought to make a difference. I mean, those are pretty wide boundaries. but we can do anything within those boundaries. We don't have to do just one thing. I didn't want to leave them high and dry with that technology consulting practice, but there was somebody that it could be handed to that could take it over, and it'd be a growth opportunity for him to be able to run that. For me, I was excited to start something new and build it around what I loved, and it's only grown in all those years. It's never diminished. So it's been a great experience.
Kind of the catalyst there is you put yourself in the driver's seat and you had a conversation, maybe one that I'm sure that gave you a bit of butterflies to go and have that conversation, even though you had a well-established, I mean, like you said, very profitable practice that you were leading. But I mean, that had to have been a little bit of a challenging conversation, but it kind of was the catalyst for all these other things. Again, putting yourself back in the driver's seat of your career.
Yeah, it wasn't just a minor climb a small mountain. It was a Mount Everest climb a big one, because you're going to start from scratch and you got to produce and you got to build something. And I've always felt strong about contributing. You always have to contribute way more than what you're paid in any organization. Things don't work if people don't do that. And so that was the one year I was a bit nervous, because I was literally starting from scratch and still had a family to support and all of that. So what a great thing that was. And I give him and the firm kudos for allowing me to do that. And to me, that was just trying to be true to myself, that I wanted to get back to where I loved Mondays again. And I had lost that for a period of time. And for probably close to a year, the fun wasn't what it used to be on a Monday. And I thought, I had a long career ahead of me. I don't want to go through the rest of my career losing something that I love, the ability to love what you do. And so to me, I think that's one of the benefits of where we live and the freedoms that we enjoy, is that people ought to be able to do what they love doing. You got to figure out how it contributes financially. I love in Jim Cullen's book, Good to Great, he talks about the hedgehog factor. It's a weird name, but solid concept. He says, find the intersect between what you can be best in the world at, what you can be passionate about, and what can drive your economic indicator, what can produce money, produce profit. And when you find the intersection of those three things, you're probably going to love Mondays, I'm going to guess.
Obviously, your reading routine there, that habit that you've established of revisiting kind of that 20% of those core books, I mean, that certainly seems to have paid off. So that's a good tactic, I'll have to say.
As a quick aside, before we got to talking about Monday, I asked a few get to know you a little better type questions of Sam that we'll share on our Beyond the Numbers segment for this episode that will release on our Simply Text YouTube channel shortly after the release of this episode. In our discussion about the favorite books that Sam has read, he shared what I thought was a great reading habit of regularly revisiting the top 20% of the books that he's read. Check out the video to hear more and find out if it's something you want to add to your reading routine as well.
I don't know what you would read a book if you don't want to do something different. That's just been my thought. If I'm going to read a book, it's because I want to do something different, not just because knowing something does not help us. Knowing doesn't make us any better. Hearing something doesn't help us. It's what we do about it. So every time I pick up a book, it's because I want to do something about it. Now I'm looking for the author to tell me, what should I do that I'm not doing right now? What should I stop doing, start doing, or keep doing to have greater success? The books that go on my section, my special section, my bookshelf, are those that have blessed me. I've been motivated enough to do something, and the author's made it clear enough what to do, that it's helped me be better. It's helped me get to higher ground as a professional, a father, a husband, whatever. And so to me, those are the books that are worth the reread, because if they helped you once, they'll help you again.
In terms of the just moving from idea to action, and again, I feel like this is such an accountant question of me to ask, right? So basic to say, well, how do you do that? I mean, but seriously, what is it? It sounds like maybe mindset of saying I'm going to do something here, not just taking a new idea.
To me, it's always been goal driven. There ought to be a goal. Again, you've heard it said, if it's not written down, it's just a wish. I believe that. So I'm pretty disciplined when it comes to goals. I'm pretty demanding of myself when it comes to goals. I create systems of accountability when it comes to goals, people I'm accountable to that I don't want to let down. I'm pretty careful not to take on too many goals, but make sure the goals I take on are truly stretch goals. It ought to be an affront to us to take on easy goals. It makes no sense at all that we would waste any of our energy spending time with easy goals that aren't going to change us. So to me, I want to get better every year. I want to end every year better, more valuable, more impactful than I begin the year. And if we do that year after year, we're going to have a pretty great career. And so to me, we ought to always be trying to climb higher. Goals are how we decide how we're going to map our climb to get higher and better is what goals we decide to take on. And books play a role, clients play a role, team members play a role in what kind of goals we're willing to take on. And there's a limited number of goals we can take on and really succeed at.
So I guess if we were to kind of bring this conversation, kind of full circle, what's something you would leave our audience with here about just finding that love or sustaining that love for Mondays?
Probably have high expectations of ourselves, be appropriately demanding. I just never wanted to go through a career and look back on it and say, oh, I could have done so much better, but now you can't do anything about that. I never wanted that. To me, I would have thought, God, what a disappointment that would have been. And all we can do is our best, but we know what our best is. I would say be demanding of ourselves to the extent that we expect us to grow, to advance, to feel the butterflies. And sometimes I've said yes to things that scared me because if I thought about them, I would say no. I take the easy way out. People asked me to speak at a conference and I thought, oh, I don't know. 10,000 people and here's who else is going to be there. I'd say yes in a heartbeat because if I thought about it, I'd end up saying no. And there's a lot of times where I put myself in those positions because I knew that would be good for me. That little bit of stress would be good for me. That anxiety would be good for me. I'd prepare twice as hard if I was scared about it. And to me, we need those experiences. We need to have a pretty good dose of those throughout the year. It doesn't have to be every day. We don't need to scare ourselves to death, but we need to stretch ourselves. And my biggest fear with so many people is they just flatline their career. They just get good at something and they stop getting better. And then they just go through the rest of their career and they get enough work because they're good enough to do it. And I'm thinking, boy, you had an okay career, but you could have had a stellar career. Why wouldn't we take the stellar career? And that's available to everybody if you're willing to be appropriately demanding of yourself. So that's be my final thought I would share with you.
All right, I have to get my rest so that my Monday isn't a mess. But I once again want to thank Sam for sharing his love of Mondays and invite you to check out the links that we've included in the show notes of this episode available at forvis.com/simplytax. I'd also love to connect with you on social media and hear what you think about Sam's approach to Mondays. You'll find me out on Twitter where I tweet about tax at Damien Martin CPA, on Instagram at TaxDad, on YouTube by subscribing to our Simply Tax YouTube channel, and out on LinkedIn. And finally, I want to know what you think about Simply Tax and would greatly appreciate a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm Damien Martin. Thank you for listening.
The information contained in this episode of Simply Tax is based on data available as of the date of its release. Forvis is under no obligation to update this information if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances. Any information provided is not to be considered as tax, legal, or financial advice. Please consult your tax advisor before acting on any matters covered.